What is your full name?
Adele Lorraine Spence Davis. I was born March 24th, 1936 at 24 Bragg Street in Brooklyn, New York, Sheepshead Bay. I had a sister that would have been, I think, 10 years older than me. Her name was Lorraine Louise. And when I was born, my mother named me Adele Lorraine. So I'm named after her, and my sister Eleanor got Louise. So she was Eleanor Louise, and I was Adele Lorraine. She died of typhoid fever when she was 9 years old. My mother was devastated. It was, her first child to lose, for her to lose a child, and it almost killed her. On my mother's side, her maiden name was Roberts. Her father's name was Frank, and her mother's name was Hannah. Phoebe Hannah, actually. Phoebe Hannah Roberts. And they were Bostonians. My mother was born in Boston. Her parents were there. Her grandparents were there. We go way, way back, almost to the Plymouth days as far as family. My father's side was from Georgia. His mother's name was Addie Turner Spence, and his father's name was Jim Tom. He didn't have James Thomas, he had Jim Tom. And he died when my dad was quite young, and my grandmother married his brother. And his brother's name was Jim something, not Tom, but the first name Jim. They were from Georgia, so they had really strange names, Southern names, I shouldn't say strange, Southern names. My grandmother, on my father's side, Addie, came up to New York in 1939, and she grew cotton. She brought cotton bolls up with her, and she grew cotton in a pot on the fire escape up in Manhattan, and the Daily News came out and took a picture of it. And had it on the front page of the Daily News. Georgia woman grows cotton in New York, in Manhattan. So anyway, my dad came from a very small family. He had a couple of sisters and maybe 3 brothers, that was it. My mom came from a very large family, 17 kids. But my grandmother had 2 sets of twins, so there's 4 right there. Yeah. And my mother had 13 children. So big families thrived back in those days. My grandfather, on my mother's side, Frank Roberts, his family, I think, came from, originally, Iberia, off the coast of Spain. Because my sister Ellie said she went up and saw a picture of him in a fire station in Massachusetts, in Beverly, Massachusetts. Yeah. And she said, Adele, he looked Spanish. He had a big mustache, his hair was very dark, his skin was very dark. So a lot of that darkness on my mother's side, my mother was black-haired, dark eyes, olive skin. I'm also olive skin. Bobby was, your grandfather was olive skin. So we brought some of that Iberian, Spain, Portugal into the family. When we did our DNA, my husband and I, on mine it said Iberia. So, okay. Anyway, but my dad and mom, my dad was in the Navy. He had a shore leave in Boston, and my grandmother had a rooming house there that my mother worked in. And he came to spend a week or 2 at the rooming house while he was on leave, and that's how he met my mom. And she had already been married and divorced with 2 kids. Right. We think divorced, we're not sure. With 2 kids. And they got together, and when he got out of the Navy, they moved down to New York. I don't remember too much before 5, but 5 years old, we would sit at night and listen to the radio because we had no television. We listened to shows like The Shadow and these mystery shows that were really scary, scary shows, and it was just all voice, so you had to imagine 90% of what was going on, and of course kids have their vivid imagination. And your grandfather used to get in the other room, and there was one show called Inner Sanctum. There was a door that would open at the beginning of the show, and it would go, and he would get in the other room and go, scared the devil out of us. I mean, we were just petrified. Oh my God, he's in the house. We're all sitting around the radio, and he'd sneak off into the hall or in another room and make that noise. And then he goes, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of man? Only the shadow knows." That was one of my earliest memories, was sitting around listening to those shows, The Lone Ranger, all those old shows. And no refrigerator. We had an ice box that, sat outside the window, and my mother would have ice delivered and put in it. And that's how we kept food cold. Yeah. We shopped every day for stuff. I went into kindergarten at PS 98, which was where all of our family went to school.
Where was that? Where was PS 98?
In Brooklyn, in Sheepshead Bay. Yeah. And I remember when I went in at, I think I was 4th grade or 3rd grade, one of the teachers said to me, "Oh my God, not another Spence." "No, not another Spence. Are you Bobby Spence's sister?" "Yes." "Lenny Spence's, Eva Spence?" "Yes." "Oh God." She didn't think we were ever going to stop coming. So I was the youngest Spence. My sister Esther came after me, my sister Ellie, then Lenny, my brother Bobby, my sister Eva, my sister Lorraine would have, had she survived. And then my mother had 2 children by her first husband. His name was Charles Laureate. My brother Buddy, I think there was about 2 or 3 years between him and Eva. Or Lorraine, and then my brother Bill was the oldest one. Mm-hmm. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, took care of kids. The area was, as I said, it was like a private little cove in Brooklyn, and the boys used to go down on the weekends and they would dive for money. They would get up on the pier, and it was a big drop pier. Yeah. And they would say, "Fetch me a quarter, fetch me a quarter." And these tourists would flip quarters and half dollars into the water, and they'd dive in and come up and hold it to show them they got it, and then tuck it on the inside of their mouth and go, "Chuck me a quarter, fetch me a quarter." And the people would throw money out. And they would make $3 or $4 on the weekend, which was a lot of money in those days.
A lot of money to dive for.
And Bobby and Lenny, and they'd come home and split it with my mother, and give her half, and they'd keep half. Wow. And they did that all summer long in the summer. The boys would all go out and play stickball. My job was to sit by the radio and yell down to them how the Yankees were doing. They scored, this was the score, blah, 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 because they were playing ball down in the street. Bobby used to wake me up in the winter. I'm talking January, February, when there is ice floating in Sheepshead Bay. Yeah. "Come on, Adele, the whiting are in. We got to go fishing." He'd wake me up out of a sound sleep. For me to go with him, boots on up to here, freezing cold, walk out into the water, ice floating by, and I had to hold a flashlight so he could see the fish, and he had a spear he would throw and kill them. And then he'd bring the fish home, and he'd say to my mother, "Caught dinner. We have dinner tonight." And I would say, I got to go to bed. I'm cold. I'm cold. My one memory from him, which is endearing now, at the time I was flabbergasted. And I'm not sure how old I was. I can't remember if he died in 44, 46, 48. Babe Ruth. Bobby came in and woke me up. It was like 6 in the morning. He said, "Get up, get dressed." He said, "We got to go see the babe." He was laid out in Yankee Stadium. And me and Bobby and Lenny, oh God, I hope I don't cry. We went down at 6:30 in the morning on the train, stood in line for almost 5 hours. And I was a kid. To walk past his casket and to pay our respects. And I would have never had those experiences had my brother not decided, girls were just as good as boys to do all this stuff. Yeah. And made me participate in that. Yeah. I'm forever grateful for that. Your grandfather had a dog called Skippy, and he was our mainstay dog, and he was a crossbred, kind of a collie mixed with something else, brown and white, beautiful dog. And your grandfather insisted that one of our cousins stole the dog. That came at night, put the dog in the car and took the dog. And of course he always wanted the dog, and my Bobby said, no, you can't have my dog, that's my dog. Oh my God, he never got over that. When he was 65, 70 years old, he was sitting at my kitchen table in this house saying, Audie Hotel and stole my dog. He had a memory like an elephant, he never forgot anything. There was one family, the Hotellings. I think they lived on the same street with us, maybe a couple of houses down, for probably the first 7, 8, 9 years of my life. And so we were very close with that family, and they had a daughter, Phyllis, who was 3 weeks older than me, so we were good friends. And we went to school together and all that. And then we moved to Long Island, and we kind of lost contact with everybody. Then we went back to Brooklyn when I was 11 or 12, and my mother had met Wesley Mead, and he took the house by storm. The man was just in love with life and everything in it. He was just, I adored him. He was so good to me. And he bought a house, moved us all into it.
Oh.
Can you imagine taking on a woman with, at that point, 6, 7 kids, still living at home?
Yeah.
Bought her a house, all new furniture, furnished the whole house. She'd never had anything like that in her life, my mom. And I made a friend when we lived in, we used to refer to it as Bath Beach. It was close to Coney Island, but not in Coney Island. And it was an all-Italian neighborhood. And we lived there for, oh God, I think from the time I was like 11 or 12 to 16, 17. And then we moved to back to Sheepshead Bay, Garrettson Beach. And I made one friend, and here we are. I'm 81 now, and I met her when I was like 12, and we are still friends to this day. Her name is Dottie Driscoll. We've been like this our entire lives. Talk to each other sometimes maybe a year before we get to each other on the phone. But then when we do, we talk every 3 or 4 months and get all caught up. And I've always been a very social person, so I have a lot of friends in my life. We're a huge family. One time I tried to add them all up and I got to 125. And I thought, well, there's more of them, I just don't know who they are. I said, my God, somebody's got to take on a family tree. And, you know, just do the names and the kids and who they belong to. Facebook has opened up a whole world to me. I had no contact with 2nd and 3rd generations. And I'm, now, you, okay, Joe. I mean, their kids. Yeah, you know, and that all came about because of, you know, well, of course, you kids moving to California. And then also because I had no family here. Well, I had some cousins in Garden Grove. But then Facebook, you know, where you can connect with all these people. Jean and Carol and Gary and Richard, you know, I talk to them now almost on a regular basis every day because of Facebook. So I love Facebook. The times that we lived in then, and I'm sure the area too that we lived in, every year, 2 weeks before school started, you could take your child to the school and they had donated clothing from the manufacturers up in Manhattan. And we could pick out school clothes, skirts, sweaters, shoes, okay, and they put them in a little plastic paper bag and send us home with them. So we'd have clothes for school the next year. Every kid in the neighborhood went and got them. So, I mean, you weren't isolated like, oh, they're so poor, you know, that kind of thing. Everybody did it. My mother crocheted. Okay, she was an avid crocheter. And she would crochet us dresses. And in the winter, we had these heavy crochet dresses that they were warm. Eva, was the smart one.
Yeah.
She got straight A's. I mean, if she'd have gone to college, I don't know what she would have ended up doing with her life, because she was one smart young girl. Bobby and Lenny were street smart.
Yeah.
I guess I'll put it. You know, they wasn't so much educational smart, but street smart.
Yeah.
They knew how to take care of themselves, and I don't mean physically. I'm talking about economically, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Lenny joined the Air Force when he was 17, went to Japan, and was stationed there for 8 years. We never saw him. He never came home. He stayed in Japan the whole 8 years. Gosh, I forgot about that. Yeah, a big chunk of my life he was in Japan. But we used to write to each other. My sister Dorothy graduated from high school. She came out to spend the summer with us when she was 17.
Yeah.
And she said, I said to her, we have to make your reservation. School starts in September. She was a senior.
Yeah.
I said, you have to go back and finish school. She said, can I stay and finish school in California? And I said, Dorothy, all your friends are back. No, I don't want to go back, Adele. I want to stay in California. So I called my mom, and I said, she wants to stay and do her last school year here. Are you okay with that? And my mother said, as long as she graduates, yeah, I'm okay with that. Because she was going to be the first one to graduate.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
And so Dorothy graduated from Newport Harbor High School in Newport Beach. It was wonderful. She was the first one in the family, and I was the only one there to see her graduate.
Yes, yeah.
Everybody else was in New York.
Yeah.
The day I gave her her class ring, we ordered her class ring, and she got her class ring. I said to her, you better cherish this, because you're the only one in the family that has one. I got my high school diploma after I was married, 21, and went to Orange Coast College for 2 years.
Wow.
But that was it. Everybody else, as soon as they turned 16, they quit and went into the city and got jobs.
What was your first job?
Aetna Life Insurance Company. I was working in the office.
Yeah.
I was a file clerk. I made $32 a month, and I spent half of it on car fare back and forth to work, lunches, you know, that kind of stuff. So I didn't have very much money, and had to pay room and board, $20 a month, to pay room and board, to live at home and have my food and all that stuff.
And how old were you when you were doing that?
16.
Wow. So that was the rule in the house, 16.
Yes, 16.
You start paying room and board.
Yes, you go to
$20.
work and start paying room and board, paying your own way. I worked for Aetna for about 2 years. Then I worked for Travelers Insurance up in Manhattan for a year. Then I met Uncle Johnny, and we got married and came to California when I was 22. Then I went to work when I was 35. I didn't work from 22 to 35. And then I went to work for Pacific Life Insurance in Newport Beach, worked for them for 10 years, then went to work for U.S. Facilities Corporation, and they had the company split into 2 different companies, and I went with the president of the company to his new company, and that was called Advantage Underwriters, and that's where I retired from, and I was executive vice president of administration when I retired. So much for not having a high school diploma. If you work hard enough, you can pretty much achieve anything you want to do. I never found doors closed to me. If they were, I was able to push them open. Some people say aggressive. I don't think I'm aggressive. I think assertive. You know, I know what I want. I know how I can do it, and I know how much not only I will benefit, but whoever I'm working for is going to benefit from it too. So I always kind of had a sense of self-worth, maybe. But again, I attribute that to my mother. Don't ever let anybody tell you can't do something. Of course you can do whatever you want to do if you work hard enough. My mom had a really rough life, but boy, did she have a value system. I can remember her sayings, and I think to myself today, I had no idea the impact those would make on me later in life. Remember her saying things to me like, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. If you have good friends and they're good people and upright, you're going to be a good person. But if you have bad friends, lead you astray, you're going to have problems. Her other thing was, when you get up in the morning and look in the mirror, you better like the person that's looking back at you. Because if you don't like her, nobody else is going to like her.
Wow.
We had a neighbor on our street when I was a kid, and she had a disease called encephalitis. Her legs swelled humongously. It was full of water, and eventually it would go to enclose her heart and she would die. All the neighbors said to my mother, you know, don't go down there because this is contagious and you have all those kids. And she said, that woman is down there by herself and she needs help. And my mother would go down every day and take towels and soak them in hot water in a bathtub and wrap this woman's legs in these towels. My mother kept her alive. And afterwards, of course, nobody got encephalitis. It wasn't contagious. It was individual to her. But afterwards, the neighbors say, I don't know how you can do that, Addie. How can you go down there and do that? And she'd say, how can you not? This is one of our neighbors. This is a human being. How could you not go down and do that? She was pretty amazing. And I did have an opportunity when she was about 74 years old. I called her and I said, Mama, you know, I don't think I've ever said thank you. And she said, for what? And I said, for making me who I am today. Put your hand out and help somebody that needs it. If somebody's down, lift them up. You know, all of this. Don't look down your nose at anybody. You're not better than anybody else. You know, all these little things that created the person. I got all that from her. And I said, and I never said thank you. So I wanted to say thank you. My dad got the job on Wall Street, and then the war broke out, and we moved to Sheepshead Bay. And my dad went into called the Seabees Construction Battalion. They were civilians that the government hired and sent overseas to build airstrips during the war. And my dad was hired, and it was like his salary was like a third higher than what it was on Wall Street. And my mother said to him, if you go and leave me here with these 8 kids, I won't be here when you get back.
Yeah.
And he left.
Yeah.
And she left. That was the end of them. But they were together 28 years. And then she met Dorothy and Richie's father and left with him, and she had 2 children with him. My dad came home from Trinidad. We lived with my dad for about a year, and then we went back to live with my mother. Sheepshead Bay was kind of our mainstay. That's where the family always generated back to. In fact, the ones that live in Brooklyn now live in Garrettson Beach, which is 10 minutes from Sheepshead Bay. You could ride a bike there. I got engaged when I was 18 to a young Italian fella in Brooklyn, and it was a big mistake from day one. His name was Charlie Emanuel. His mother was one of these Italian dominating mothers that, you know, you will marry her, she's Catholic, she's, you know, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, it didn't work out. I had been unengaged for about 9 months, and my mother kept saying, go out, go do something. So this girl across the street, she kept saying, oh, you should come out with me, you should come out with me. And I kept saying, oh, no. She was into hanging out in bars. I didn't hang out in bars. I didn't drink. And my mother kept saying, oh, go with her one time, go with her one time. So finally I said, okay. So I went with her, and it was a place called Tampico's. And all the Marines from Floyd Bennett Field hung out there. That's why she liked to go there. So I'm thinking, here I am in a bar, I don't drink, and it's full of Marines, you know, really out of my element. And here comes this Marine, plops himself down next to me, and he says, looks at me, and I'm reading a paper, a newspaper, mind you.
At the bar.
And he said to me, so what does dear Abby have to say today? Or something like that. I said, oh, well, she had this letter from, you know, and we started talking about dear Abby. And then he asked me to dance, and he was a good dancer, and that's one thing that I love to do. I love to dance. We hit it off with dancing and dear Abby. And then he asked if he could see me again, and I said yes. I gave him my phone number. And he called the next day. And I said, well, I don't get home from work until 6 o'clock. He said, well, can we go out to dinner or something? So anyway, I gave him the address, and when I came home, he was sitting on the front steps talking to my mother. And I thought, Did you just get here? Oh, no, I've been here for a while. I told you I'd get home at 6 o'clock. Well, I was talking to your mom. Oh, my God, my mother said, who is he? Yeah. And I said, I met him when I went out with Carol. And she said, oh, Adele, he's lovely. He's really nice. Well, that was in the first part of May. And then we just started seeing each other every night. And then I think he proposed to me in August. And I said, yeah. He said, now, before you say yes, I can't live in New York. I can't stand this place, Adele. I'm sorry, but I can't live here. So if we get married, we're going to live in California. And I said, I'm fine. I'm good with that. Because I hated the cold. I was never a warm, a cold weather person. And, I mean, Hollywood, what more could you ask for, right? So I said, I'm good with that. So we got married on September 14th, 1957. We left for California on December 16th, 1957, 3 months later. And been out here ever since. Uncle Johnny had gone to church when he was young, but he had never been baptized. And I was that old Catholic hang-up, if you're not baptized, you go straight to hell. So you have to be baptized. So I said, I can't marry you if you're not baptized. I just can't. So he said, well, I'm not going to be baptized Catholic because I don't agree with the Catholic faith. So we came to terms that, okay, Methodist. We'd go to a Methodist church and he would get baptized. And the pastor said he would marry us in that church. Uncle Johnny was in the Marine Corps. So he invited his whole platoon, which was I don't know how many Marines, 9, 10 at the time. And they all wore their dress blues. We had a military kind of styled wedding. Cut the cake with the sword, the whole 9 yards. And it was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. We had a great time. And the pastor that married us said, I have not had a military wedding in my church since 1942. And that was 1957. He was so smart. Most intelligent person I ever met. And he could coach you out of books, papers, everything. But the one thing that I think impressed me as much, we were coming home one night and there was a black church. And the church was in session, and they were standing and clapping and singing. And there were these 3 young Italian boys making fun of them. And he went up to them. And he said, what are you guys doing? And they said, oh, we're watching those N-word. Okay. And he lectured them, told them, would you like it if they stood in front of your church and did that? And he was 22 at the time. And he lectured those boys for maybe a good 5 to 10 minutes. And they finally, one of them actually said, sorry about that. And they turned around and left and walked away. And I was agog. I was, oh my God. This man has so much heart and soul. One of the things that we did with our kids, and I know that some of my friends thought, you people are off the wall. As soon as they turned 18, we took them down to register to vote. And then we took them out to dinner to celebrate. And people would say, what, are you crazy? Come on. I wanted to make sure that they really understood that was a privilege. Yeah. And that they have a responsibility to do that. Wow. And to vote. Yeah. And neither of my kids has ever missed an election. My mother, she was a Roosevelt Democrat. She adored Franklin Roosevelt. He could do no wrong. And I remember her in November trudging through snow with a pair of shoes on, no stockings on, but she went and voted. She said, you never ever miss an election, you go vote. From the time I was a kid, that when I walked into a Catholic church, particularly during Mass, I always felt God's presence. And I never got that feeling in any other church I ever went to. I felt like when I prayed in church that God was actually listening to me and heard me. None of us were Catholic.
Yeah.
Nobody in the family. My father was a Southern Baptist. My mother was a Presbyterian. Her attitude was, when you're old enough, you go visit all these churches, choose the one you like the best, and then once you choose it, then you better go, because it's going to be your decision.
How old were you when she put that on you guys?
Oh, 7, 8 years old. Wow. So we lived in a neighborhood that was so diverse. I went to synagogue with some of my Jewish girlfriends to see what it was like. I went to Methodist churches, Episcopal churches, Catholic churches, but I never had the feeling in the other churches that I had when I went into a Catholic church. So Esther and I did in catechism together and everything, and we converted together, and she was 14 and I was 12. The bishop of Brooklyn did our confirmation, and he was, let's see if I can remember this, he was the uncle of Dorothy and Richie's father. Small world. And you know, years ago when they confirmed you, they smacked you in the face, you know, like this. I confirm thee. And they give you this little smack in the face. So he just brushed his hand against me, but he slapped Esther, and she almost fell over. In the church, I had to grab her. She almost fell over. He hit her so hard. And I remember when we came out, my mother said, "He knows you." That's why he smacked her. He knows you. So many times over the course of my life, when I have even gone in the bedroom and just closed the door and said, you know, God, I need you, come and listen to me. I need to talk to you today. And I would ask him to help me with something. I always came out of that room feeling like, okay, I'm not alone. He's going to help me with this. Yeah. And it stood me through a lot of stuff. 17 years of cancer-free.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And I smoked for 45 years. And one day I said, oh God, I got to stop doing this. Please, please, I can't do it on my own, please. 20 years ago, I've not smoked since. So I have a lot of faith in God, because I think God has put a lot of faith in me. I love gardening. I'm inhibited now because I have back problems and some other health problems, so I can't do as much as I used to do in the garden. But I love working out in the garden. It's the greatest stress reliever to me. Just get in the dirt and jig it up and mix it up, and it just calms and relaxes you. Friends. I love my friends. I have a group of girls that we worked together we started together in 1972. And we have Girls' Day Out every 3 months. And we get together and we go to a movie, or we go out to lunch, or we go to each other's houses and just do some kind of a little craft or project, and just share life stories, because, you know, we've seen our kids grow up together and all of this. And so I love friends. Yeah. Friends are mainstays. In fact, we met up last month. We went to my friend Linda's house. I'm trying to think, what did we do there that day? I can't remember. The time before, she did an English tea, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was like high tea that you go to these expensive hotels for. She had everything from scones to cottage cream, and I mean potato soup and sandwiches, and oh my God, it was magnificent. And none of us had been to high tea before. Yeah. And she did it in her house. We had a wonderful time.
I want to know your favorite thing.
Okay.
Your favorite animal.
Dogs.
What kind of dog?
German Shepherds.
Favorite board game?
Dominoes.
Favorite candy?
Milky Way.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Butter pecan.
Favorite flower?
Oh, iris with baby's breath mixed in with them.
Favorite meal?
Italian.
Anything specific?
Lasagna.
Anything.
Chicken palm. Anything.
Favorite movie?
The Way We Were.
Favorite movie star?
Robert Redford.
Favorite singer?
Oh, Jimmy Darren. Because your grandfather sang just like him.
Yeah. Favorite sports team / athlete?
New York Yankees. Favorite athlete? Troy Aikman.
Is there anything else, any knowledge, any advice, things that you want to make sure to pass down to other people?
Well, I think I said this before, always be kind.
Yeah.
Lend the struggling guy a hand, because you may not know when you're going to be down at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to have somebody help you up. God, support your government, vote, get out and walk precincts if you have to, knock on doors, do whatever you have to do, but have your voice and have it heard.